CashFlow Diary Podcast, episode 284.
Welcome to yet another exciting episode of the CashFlow Diary Podcast, the podcast that teaches you insider tips, tactics, and strategies for creating leverage streams of cash flow into your life. Learn from top-performing entrepreneurs, business owners, investors, and thought leaders from across the globe as they share their secrets to success. Like what you learn on this and other CashFlow Diary podcast episodes? Go to learninvestingnow.com and sign up to receive powerful tips and information that will help you succeed as an entrepreneur and investor. Now, here's your host, investor, entrepreneur, business owner, educator, speaker, author, and master facilitator of Robert Kiyosaki's cash flow game, Jay Massey.
All right, and welcome to another episode of the CashFlow Diary Podcast. I'm your host, Jay Massey, and I'm glad that you're here today. Here's why. Because we have something that I would consider to be an anomaly to talk about today. You guys have heard me say in the past, how many of you have ever had a professor, like an economics professor, who actually owned a business? Like, just think about that. You've got occasionally individuals who teach something that they haven't done in the university environment. And today I'm so excited. Why? Because we have a professor who's actually owned a business talking about business. And that's just exciting to me because he has taken a very unique stance, not only in business, but you and I will be able to glean from him how to bootstrap it, how to build it really close, because he's talked to hundreds of entrepreneurs. Now, when I say 100 entrepreneurs, I mean, in this particular case, exactly 100, because he did this while bicycling across the United States, which I'm like, okay, this guy has so much to share with you and I. In fact, he's shared it with a ton of people because he's appeared on Great Day America, First Business from Washington, Voice of America, Good Morning Chicago. He's been around the block. He is now here to share with you and I some of the principles for the Main Street Entrepeneur, which, by the way, happens to be the title of his new book. Help me welcome none other than Mike Glauser. Mike, how are you?
I'm doing great, Jay. Thanks so much for having me. I'm excited to visit with you.
Not as excited as I might be because you have so many things going on and you do them in an interesting way. I mean, from deciding to ride a bike across, first of all, just deciding to ride a bike across America is interesting enough, but then interviewing entrepreneurs along the way, I'm like, okay, there's a lot we have to talk about. But before we get there, I got to ask you the question that I ask everybody the first time they're here. When I look at today's entrepreneurs, and of course you are clearly one, a lot like yesterday's superheroes. I think entrepreneurs and superheroes have a ton in common. For example, we occasionally get dressed up. We save people with our special skills in various different ways. And occasionally, I do wonder if there is a cape flowing from my back. But at the end of the day, what it comes down to is before Spider-Man was Spider-Man, he was just a normal person. He had an origin story. So before building your own enterprises, before teaching, before the books, before speaking, before helping all of the individuals that you have helped, what we want to know is who is Mike Glauser?
Good. Okay. Well, when I was young, I had this fascination with building organizations for some reason. I just thought it was so cool to build an organization of people that really liked working together, that was very effective in achieving important goals and very efficient in achieving those goals. And I just thought that would be so awesome to know how to do that. And so I went to school, and when I was in college, there wasn't a major in entrepreneurship. So I pieced together this really wonderful interdisciplinary degree I call organizational studies. And I went straight through and finished my PhD when I was in my 20s.
Wow.
That's how nuts I was.
Wow.
And then I took a job teaching, and I went into my first MBA course, and I had a lot of bravado. I walked in, put my name, Dr. Glauser, on the board because I just passed my, my exams and had my PhD. And I turned around and I was horrified that I was the youngest kid in the class by probably 10 to 15 years. And I realized I had studied a lot about organizations, and I knew a lot about organizational theory, but I really didn't know much about organizations. And these MBA students were in an executive MBA program, and they were in the furniture industry and the tobacco industry and the insurance industry. And so at that point, I said, you know what, if I'm going to become a thought leader someday in this field and have an impact, I've got to leave the safe harbor of the university and go become an entrepreneur and practice what I've been preaching. And it was kind of frightening to see if I could actually do it. And so, my wife and I built our first company. She is trained in nutrition and health and fitness. And my degree, of course, was in, management, business strategy, and, organizational theory. And so we combined our talents and built our first company. And we grew it was a multi-million-dollar business. We had 500 employees. And
nice.
I was sitting in my office one day, and I just couldn't believe, what we had done and how quickly it had happened. And I got a phone call from he's the CEO of a publicly traded company in Toronto. And he said, Mike, I've been tracking you guys and you're awesome. And I want to buy your company. And I said, it's not for sale. And he said what everybody says, everything's for sale for the right terms and the right conditions and the right price. And can I fly to your corporate office and spend a few days with you? And I said, yes, you can, but I'm telling you, the business is not for sale.
Right.
So he flew down and he studied our books for a few days with his executive team. And then he came and put an offer on my desk, an offer sheet, 1 page. And I looked at the bottom line. The number was too low. And I just said, well, it's been nice meeting you, but the company's not for sale and this number's too low. And he said, well, write a number at the bottom of the page that you would sell this company for. And so I wrote a big number there. It was quite a bit bigger than his. And he said, okay, I'll come back tomorrow and tell you what we think. And he came back the next day and said, we're gonna give you this amount for your company under 2 conditions. One is we're moving the office to Dallas, and we'll take some of your staff members, but we really don't need you or this office here. And I said, great, because I'd thought about this and I didn't want to run a company I no longer owned. And then the second thing, he looked at me very seriously, and I could tell he was worried. He thought maybe I would be upset about this next point. And he said, this is a deal killer. He says, you have to take cash. So I held a look of consternation as long as I could. And I said, I talked to my board that night and they said, yeah, if he'll offer that much, let's merge with him, because it was a good industry buy. It was a nice thing it was a nice home for our business. And so I said, okay. But anyway, so I had that experience teaching, loving organizations, wanting to create them. I went out and actually did it.
Right.
And then when I wanted to go back to the university, I was kind of shocked that what was being taught did not reflect anything that I had been doing as a real entrepreneur.
Oh,
it was theoretical. It was research-based. It was correlating one little variable with another little variable. It had maybe statistical significance, but no practical significance. And I never met an entrepreneur that read any of those academic journals. So I just said, you know what? What I'm going to do is I'm going to try to teach entrepreneurship differently. I'm going to become like an entrepreneurial anthropologist and go out into the field and find out what, everyday men and women really do to build companies. And so that's me. That's what I've been doing for 20 years is gathering oral histories of businesses and then using those stories to write articles and to write books and to create films and just to try to get the message out, the message of hope, and to teach people that we can create our own jobs. We can create our own companies. We can be successful. And every day, American men and women are doing it all across the country. And, we have thousands and thousands of articles written about eBay and Google and Facebook and Instagram. And we have almost nobody writing about the 28 million small business owners that are creating, 55% of the jobs in America.
Right.
And they're not real sophisticated and they don't always have academic training, but they build these incredible companies with purpose and passion and tenacity and just sound principles. And so that's what, my mission has been, is to try to highlight those great heroes, those unsung heroes, and summarize the keys that they teach us, and then, help other people create businesses. And at our Center for Entrepreneurship at Utah State University, we've helped launch over 100 companies in the last few years. So
I think that's awesome. I mean, I was already fascinated, like, and hopefully everyone listening, you get why I was fascinated with the idea of riding a bike across the country, but let alone interviewing entrepreneurs and then understanding that we have a professor who's like, you know what? Let me go do this and then teach. And I'm like, are you kidding me? This is awesome. And to hear you, because that is one of my underlying frustrations, is that I mean, again, the college dropout, I never finished. I had to build what we have from ideas and scrounging resources together and figuring it out and bumping my nose and head and every other body part along the way. And I'm like, and then occasionally I run into people with, I have a master's degree, and I'm like, I don't think that's going to help you. It's going to be a handicap at the beginning. In my business work, my consulting work, I don't use the title Dr. Glauser. I don't even tell anybody I have a PhD because it's kind of a cut, it's kind of embarrassing in the business world. But the funny thing, these 100 entrepreneurs we interviewed on our bicycle ride across America, none of them had any training in entrepreneurship. Perfect.
And I think 6 or 7 of them had a business degree. And the rest were just, great people that worked hard and figured it out and gave phenomenal customer service and, pivoted when they had to other streams of revenue. And it was just the most incredible thing I've ever done to cross America on a bicycle and meet these people that just we don't know about. Right.
So many of the listeners know, and maybe not, but just as a quick recap, that's kind of what you're describing is how, my wife and I started. It wasn't because, we had some sort of business advantage. It was born out of necessity and figuring it out. My question, I guess, to you, Mike, now that you've been able to look at both sides, because you have a very, very unique perspective, in my opinion, about, business and how it's taught, specifically how it's taught. What would you say to the individual that's listening right now who's like wondering, do I have what it takes to make it?
The answer is yes. Everybody has what it takes to make it. There's a big debate about whether, successful entrepreneurship is in our DNA or in our genes or part of our personality, and or if anybody can do it. And I'm absolutely convinced that the research we have done and the keys to success we've identified, they are practices that anyone can learn to implement in a marketplace. Now, you need some passion and you need, to be able to talk to people. There's some personality characteristics that have bearing, but really we can teach anybody how to implement a set of practices into a marketplace. And we believe the keys to success we've identified will increase your odds from 50-50 for success to about, 90-10 if you follow the practices. And the book actually documents from A to Z what you have to do to be successful. And it's not me, this professor, preaching this. It's these entrepreneurs all across America teaching the principles through their stories.
And that's what I like about it. That's what I like about you. It's not theoretical knowledge. It's what I would call street knowledge. If you actually want to get something done, here's what you need to do. No more, no less. So you said something that I thought was interesting, though. You said there were some skills that had bearing as it relates to personality, because typically I know, when you're considering this new thing, it requires a change of the person to some degree. It requires a change of skill sets. Have you found, say, across the studies and research that you've done, that how important has the willingness of the entrepreneur to grow personally, how important has that been in their, success table?
Well, that's absolutely critical. Being humble and having your ears open and finding a brain trust of mentors to teach you quickly to jumpstart your venture is one of the keys to success. People with a lot of hubris that are kind of cocky, that think I've got the greatest thing there is and everyone's going to love it, they usually don't make it. But if you're a little bit scared and you are open to learning everything that you possibly can and listening to people that have been there and done that, that's a very important part of this. We found that this is one of the keys to success is these successful people had a lot of mentors. They were very honest about who they were and what they had and what they didn't have, and they identified people that could help them fill in the missing pieces. And they went out and they just said, "Hey, I love what you're doing. You're one of my role models. Is there any way I can meet you for lunch, or can I take you to breakfast once a month? You have to eat, so can I bring lunch to your office every other Friday?" And they weren't afraid to surround themselves and build this puzzle of mentors that saved them so much time. The mentors kept them from the bumps and bruises, and most important, they introduced other contacts to them that could teach them them about manufacturing and accounting and UPC codes if you were in retailing. And so just being open to learning, and then, having to shift gears, we call it the pivot, but they would launch something and it wasn't quite working, and they'd have to come back and rethink and maybe repackage or reprice, or maybe even look at a new channel of distribution. So, that willingness to learn and be open to other people that know more than you do is critical. And then just the work ethic. Malcolm Gladwell in his book Outliers talks about the 10,000 hour principle.
Right.
And he's shown that to be good at anything takes 10,000 hours. And if you're doing it, full time, that's about 3 to 4 years. And so they were willing to work hard, but it wasn't a drudgery because they were passionate about what they were doing. They had a driving purpose, but they worked very, very hard. It's not for the faint of heart or people that just want to make a lot of money quick and not do anything.
So, because you're bringing up some very, very common points that happen today is like, something happens, maybe they had a bad Friday and all of a sudden, hey, I'm going to be an entrepreneur today and start a business. But what you're kind of bursting some bubbles in some sense, as it's not overnight. It does take time. I guess my question is why don't we see more people actually take this plunge or this leap?
I think that people don't understand how to do it, and they don't believe that they can do it. So, for example, at the university, we have all these business students that all want to be entrepreneurs, and they're trying to figure it out, but they don't have good ideas, and they don't have any technology. They don't have products. Then we go over into the engineering school, and these students have incredible ideas, and they have technology, and they all have to design a project each year, but they're really fearful. They don't believe they can build a business because they don't know anything about business. So we bring them into our center, and we put together diverse groups of students from a variety of backgrounds. And very quickly, these engineers realize that, hey, I can do this. This is not as hard as I thought it was. And they get excited about it, and they launch, great little companies. And so it's really a matter of, I think it's two things. It's, inspiration. You have to see role models and be inspired and feel like, wow, if he can do it, I can do it. And then number two is you have to just learn the basic principles. And that's what the book Main Street Entrepeneur is all about. We said, after studying all these entrepreneurs and listening to hours and hours of tape, we have come up with the common practices that the successful entrepreneurs do that those who fail do not do. And the book takes you right through the steps. It shows you what has to happen if you want to really up your odds. And it starts with, evaluating your experience and looking at the ideas you have and testing your ideas against a set of criteria. So, we've tried to make it really, really simple and give people hope and confidence.
Got it. And one of the things that I've seen and I believe is a help and at the same time can be a bit of a challenge. I think, for a lot of reasons, becoming an entrepreneur, starting a business, I think most Americans have a unique advantage in general, just because you live in the United States. But I also believe that technology makes this process, the barrier to entry is like, you just need a cell phone type of thing. That's what it feels like to me. Is that something that you've seen work out and play out as well?
Yeah, I get this question a lot from journalists and podcasters. They say, "Is it easier or harder to start a business today than it was 20 years ago?"
Right.
And I can tell you, it is far easier today. And there's some reasons for that. And one reason is technology. You know, the same technology that big corporations used to have that was very, very expensive is now available to anybody. So we have computers, we have desktop publishing, we have all kinds of, performance management softwares that are available, cell phones. We can work from anywhere and it's cheap. So that's one thing. The second thing is the internet now has allowed us to not only have geographic markets where we're located as a business, but it can give us national and international markets. Yes. We can have niche markets all over the world for our products. Another thing is that there's a real preference across America now for smaller businesses. People are getting tired of the big boxes, the big chains, and they want to support the local business, the local vendor. And all the surveys show that we like small businesses more than big corporations if they have similar products, good quality, and good prices.
Well, hold on. What do you mean? Because I've not heard anyone say that one before. There's a preference for the quote unquote mom and pop shop as opposed to the Walmarts. That's what I'm interpreting from what you're saying. But you're like, is this like industry specific or just all services in general?
No. In the book, I review some of the latest research on consumer preferences, and people, view small businesses, the favorability rating is like 65, 70%, and they view big corporations, the favorability rating is like 12 or 15%.
Wow.
And we like and trust small local vendors, and if they can meet our needs, that's the preference in the country right now. In fact, I was just in San Francisco, and there are actually zoning laws against big chains and big box stores, and they've defined what chains are, and they won't let, a number of those into the city any longer.
Interesting. Hold that thought for just 1 second. I want everybody to hear what he just said and then interpret it, especially for those of you who are looking to be real estate entrepreneurs. If this is happening, if this preference is happening, and we just had an example of San Francisco and it's affecting zoning. Zoning is done at the city level. That city level meeting is something that's very, very public. If you go out and find where this is happening, that can give you an inside edge on being able to acquire the correct commercial properties in those areas. I'm just saying right now, what I just heard was a huge opportunity to be able to provide the real estate to that small business owner, because he or she has to put their shop somewhere. And you are learning at the same time I am that this is happening. But more importantly, I want to make sure you interpret what he just said properly so that you can go and use it to your advantage. So, Michael, with this happening, is there any other places other than San Francisco?
Well, I'm just
real estate guy. That's something that just like, whoa, what did he just say? Yeah.
Yeah. Here's what's happening. This is awesome. It's really to the advantage of the new startup entrepreneur. And that is that because we live in a high-tech world and we're losing touch with people, we can buy everything online. We don't ever have to interact with the sales clerk any longer. There's this growing need for high touch. So the high-tech revolution creates a need for high touch or community. Creates a need for people to interact and to be able to go and sit in the corner shop and talk to the business owner. And, in San Francisco, we met with Kristen Evans, who owns the Booksmith, and there are no more Barnes and Nobles in San Francisco any longer. And she thinks that, people can go on Amazon and different places and buy books quickly, and you can buy them, for your iPad or your Nook in the middle of the night. But she said there's just this incredible need for people to congregate and be part of a community. So she's doing extremely well by having author events and having, competitions and having classes in her store. And so people are just craving being part of a community, and they're really starting to prefer the smaller local vendor. The shop local movement is growing significantly. And so that's another advantage. But the last thing I want to mention, why it's easier to start a business now than ever before, is this whole concept of crowdfunding. Yeah. We've always taught that, quickly cobble together some resources to create a prototype and get it into the market cheaply to see if anybody really wants it before you spend, thousands and thousands of dollars. And if no one will buy it, don't go build it. Well, crowdfunding has allowed us to throw concepts into the marketplace and see if people will buy the products before we even produce them.
Right.
So, for example, I just met with the guys at Power Practical. They have figured out a way to create power to recharge your devices from fire. So you can be out camping and recharge your phone over your campfire.
I love it.
It's called the power pot, and you just put the pot on the fire and it heats up, and it's got a cord on it, and it charges your MP3 player, and it charges your phone out in the middle of the wilderness, off the grid.
Now that's insanely awesome. And this is why I love entrepreneurs, because we take things that are problems, we rethink them, we figure out solutions, and then it comes down to, well, I wonder if anybody will buy it. I promise you, I would have never come up. But once you say it, you go, I can see a market for that. I can see people who would want to have that ability, from first responders to people who like camping and outdoors. I can see where this makes sense. That's awesome.
Here's the thing. Inside your head right now are ideas. And one of the things that I hear a lot is, well, I don't have the money, so I can't do what I want to do. I can't. If only I had, then I could. One of the things I want to say to you guys, understand this. You have not a money problem. You have an idea problem. And the cool thing is you can always come up with a new idea. And then in fact, you have many, many, many times. Now, all you got to do is put that intellectual capital to work. Maybe some of these episodes are giving you some ideas. Maybe you're still struggling for a few more. How about then I give you a copy of my book, a free PDF copy of CashFlow Diary, 10 Steps to Creating Wealth in Any Economy. Just go over to cashflowdiary.com/free book. Again, cashflowdiary.com/free book. And put in your email address, put in your name, and download it. And for those of you who are like, well, I'm never going to read that, I would prefer to have an audiobook. You do the same thing, because we have a special in the audiobook right behind that. So that will help you both. Anyway, let's get back to it.
So here's the cool part of the story is that they were campers, and they, loved music. And when their devices would die, they'd get real frustrated. So they thought, if we create something like this, I wonder if other people will buy it. So they put a campaign on Kickstarter, and it funded very, very quickly. They far exceeded their goal, and it was so successful that they now, every time they create a product, they get tons of feedback from their backers. They have 24,000 backers now, and they say, hey, what else do you need? How about this? And if they can fund it on Kickstarter, then they go build it. And if they can't, they don't go build it. And so they've now raised $1.5 million to build 6 products. And here's the cool thing is about 30% of their customers during a given campaign will interact with them and give them feedback about, hey, this is cool, but how about if you tweak it? And how about if you make it do this? So their customers are now part of the product development process. They're part of the business, which is the highest level of customer service that there is when you have customers as partners. And the fun story is these campaigns were doing well enough that the producers of Shark Tank called them, and they were on Shark Tank, and Mark Cuban gave them $250,000 and owns 12% of their company.
That's insane. I love, and this is what I'm talking about. Where else can you start with an idea and go, I wonder, and find, and if you take the actions to go find out, you can make some amazing things happen. Now, there's a couple of things that you've brought up more than once, and and I'm going to assume it's important. Because I know for me, one of the things I'm always after is to close the feedback loop and make it happen as fast as humanly possible. And you mentioned that, smaller companies are often able to provide that better customer service. You mentioned here that this 30% engagement ratio, we'll call it, is a way to provide some of the highest levels of customer service when the customer is a part of the business in that way. Which I guess leads me to just ask a very general but interesting question there, at least interesting to me. Is the difference then between the preference of the big business to the small business customer service?
That's part of it. There's a lot of things that small businesses do better than big corporations. And one of them is, the customer service in large corporations is really, really pretty poor. And, the people on the front lines they're 7 levels down in the corporation, and they're interacting with customers constantly, and they're hearing things that need to be fixed or improved, but then they have to pass it up this hierarchy, 7 levels, and it never goes anywhere. But if you're a small company and an entrepreneur and you're, out there working with your customers and you're serving your customers with your own team, you hear things, you hear, primary information, and you're able to tweak and fix things faster. And also because you need customers to survive, you give better service than an employee that's making a minimum wage that's, your face to the customer. So that's one of the things. The other thing is smaller businesses can pivot much, much faster. They innovate. 50% of all of our innovations come from small companies, and 95% of all of our radical innovations, our disruptive technology, comes from smaller companies. And they're able to innovate for about 1/10 the cost that large corporations can create products. So they're just more efficient. They're more nimble. They're closer to their customers. They're listening to feedback. They're making changes quickly, and they're giving fabulous service. It's, we've gone from a kind of an agricultural economy to a manufacturing economy to a information economy to now what I say a customer economy. And that is customers have so many choices that they pick companies that they really like, and they pick vendors that they really like, and they don't have to go buy from people they don't like any longer.
Yeah. Well, what do you think drives that ability to innovate? Is it just the fact that, hey, we're fighting for survival as the small business person, so it's like we better listen, we better move quickly, or is there something else that's driving that ability to innovate and pivot and change?
I think I get this question a lot. In fact, I just wrote an article. It's called "Are You an Innovator or an Executor?" And there's a little quiz. It's at entrepreneur.com. But it basically innovation to me is not as difficult as we might think. We kind of think there's these really, really creative, innovative, curious people that come up with all the inventions. But really, innovation involves being very close to your customers and finding out what they need and what they like and what they don't like and what the missing pieces are, and then running ideas by them and letting them test products and give you feedback. And because smaller businesses are more closely linked to their consumers, they hear a lot more about what is needed than, think of this, the strategy guys in the big corporations are, 8 levels up the pyramid at the very top, and they're so far removed from the edge of the organization or the boundary, they don't have any clue of what's going on. The show,
Interesting.
Undercover Boss.
Yeah, I love that show.
At the end of that show, the CEO always goes, "I had no idea this was going on out in the field." And I always think, why didn't you know? You're the CEO. You should be out there. You should have known this stuff. Small business owners know that stuff.
Well, okay. Well, then, but we have I'm sensing, but here's my challenge, Mike. All right. If we're starting small, as many of us are, right? Whether that's our first property or on the way to our hundreds or whatever the product or service is, at some point we get bigger. How does one maintain that closeness to the customer when we're trying to put in systems and all these other things that to allow us to serve more people, but also in effect distance us from, that, face-to-face handshake?
I'll tell you what I've learned. This was a great insight I discovered running my own company. When you're the solopreneur and you're given the service, you give phenomenal service because it's your life. Your customers are your lifeblood, and you make sure everyone goes away going, "Wow, this guy's really good. That's a great company." But as you get bigger, you have other people providing that service. And so what I learned is that the service is in the system, and you have to create a system that perpetuates the same kind of service that you would give as the founder of the company. What that means is you have to, here's what I did basically, and this is talked about in the book. But first of all, and I've done this with a lot of clients I work for, you create a profile of mind-blowing service. So you go to your actual customers and say, if you were to come into our business and then walk out raving about us saying, these guys are the best, no one's ever done that for me, what would we have to do for you to say that? And so you create this profile of what they tell you would blow their minds. And then once you have that profile, you go out and you first recruit people that can naturally do that. And then number 2, you train everybody in that profile. And number 3, you reward everybody. You evaluate whether they're doing that, and then you reward them based on how they do that. So that profile of phenomenal service drives all the human resource systems. You recruit for it, you train for it, you evaluate it, and you reward for it.
Got it.
So in my company, I had 500 employees, and a lot of them were high school and college age kids. And so we said, hey, with every customer, we need to do these 5 or 6 things. And we're going to evaluate. We have customers that are going to evaluate how well we do on that. And we're going to give you feedback on how well you have done. And the opportunities are to those that do well. And then we're going to actually share the earnings with you. If we can do well and grow this store and grow our revenues and customers are raving about us, we're going to share the earnings from you. So we created this entire system. And every employee knew exactly what they were to do. And I published this newsletter of the best stories every month. From the managers would send me stories of what the employees were doing with our customers. And I'd publish about 20 of those, and I'd go give those employees, $200 in cash. And so every month, the other employees would all read that newsletter and go, oh, I see what we're supposed to do. Oh, I want to get the $200. And they were all trying to outdo each other, giving phenomenal service to these customers. And they were even given better service than I would have given. So that's the key. The service is in the system. The system will give you whatever behavior it's designed to give you. And if the system focuses on, evaluates, rewards customer service, your employees will do it.
Got it. Okay. I like this. I like this a lot. And hopefully those of you realize that was one of those moments where stopping from washing the dishes and being on the treadmill was important to take some notes, because that was really, really awesome. Now, you speak a lot about how work, because we started to hint on that before because I just had to know that. I just had to know. But before we got down that path, you were starting to talk about the transition of, I'll say, employment or work, or how it's changing. And I know I feel this. I mean, and I'm grateful for technology, because it allows me to keep, labor costs significantly lower than they would be otherwise, to provide the service that we do provide and get the amount of content and products and services out there into the marketplace and make these things happen. But at the same time, what is work? And that's changing really, really fast. What's your thoughts on what I believe you call it, this new world of work?
Yeah, this is the main reason we rode our bikes across America, to find these people. We were looking for people that had created jobs in places where there were no jobs. And we thought they would be great role models for the new world of work that we're facing. And this is going to sound like bad news, and it's not. I'm an optimist. I'm not an alarmist. But many people are predicting that our unemployment rate could rise to as high as 30% over the next decade. And it's because technology is eliminating jobs in every single industry.
Right.
So there's been many studies done, one by Oxford University. They looked at 702 occupations, and they predict that 47% of those will be gone in the next 10 years. And the Associated Press did an extended study and published a number of articles saying that, in the future, people entering the world of work will be out of work about 5 times for a year or more during their careers.
Wow.
And just all we have to do is look around us. Software is replacing accountants and analysts, and e-commerce and self-checkout kiosks are replacing retail employees. And we've got online schools now that are replacing teachers in the brick and mortar traditional school. We've got delivery drones that are now being used in the medical world and in the retail world. We've got smart cars that will dramatically impact the driving transportation industry and the insurance industry. And it's funny that just this last few weeks, Wendy's announced they're putting self-serve kiosks in 6,000 of their restaurants. And the CEO of Carl's Jr. and Hardee's is studying that and will probably follow suit. And then a company in China that makes iPhones and products for Samsung, they just laid off 6,000 workers in China and replaced them with robots. So, a robot in manufacturing used to cost 10 years ago maybe a couple $100,000. Now it's half the price, and it costs about $4 an hour to operate, and it'll replace 20 employees. And so what's happening is anything that can be automated is going to be automated. And it's going to eliminate a lot of the entry-level jobs and the, middle-income jobs. And so we were very concerned about that. We said, well, we've handled employment shifts in the past. We used to all work in, farming 100 years ago. Now only 2% of us work in farming.
Right.
And after World War II, 35% of us worked in manufacturing. Now it's only about 8 to 10%. So we can handle these shifts in employment. But the problem now is technology is accelerating so rapidly that there's going to be this period of time where we've got to catch up. We got to create new industries and we got to create new jobs. And in the meantime, many of us are going to probably have to create our own jobs and create our own companies and look at ourselves as me Inc. I'm my own entity, and I've got to create some revenue streams to provide for myself, and I've got to find needs to contribute to this community that are valuable. And if you go back, to the turn of the century, more than 100 years ago, there were no big corporations, and that's how our economy worked. We all found trades or professions, and we delivered those services in communities. The difference now, though, is the same technology that is eliminating jobs allows us to work from anywhere and build national and international companies with that technology.
Indeed.
And so we think there's opportunities, but what we have to do is we have to learn how to, work with machines and software and robots, create them and use them where it makes sense. But we have to figure out, how are we going to interface with that change and how are we going to contribute? And so, we rode our bikes from the west coast of Oregon to the east coast of Virginia and interviewed 100 of these solopreneurs and job creators that are building companies. And, they were moving to a town that they liked, and they were saying, okay, now I'm here. I want to live here. Now what am I going to do? And they taught us a ton about how to create your own company.
Indeed. Now, in general, I've always thought of the process of eformalization or just doing more with less as a good thing. And I still kind of see it that way. But what you're saying is that there's a moment of chaos during the switch, for lack of a better way of putting it.
Yeah, there'll be some pain. And so this is our mission is we are optimistic and we want to help. We want first, it's naive to not pay attention to this, and it's naive to think it won't affect you. Mm-hmm. So we have to face reality and say, okay, let's figure out how we're going to adjust. And one of the solutions is self-employment, and that's the one that we are trying to preach across the country.
Is there another? You said one of the solutions. I don't see what other solution could there possibly be. When you're. It's more or less because, so much more is accessible to each individual. We've got other countries now who also have access to the internet. Their barriers to entry are lower. So they're having access to, customers just as well. We can get labor, like I said, significantly less. And in my world, when it comes to rehabbing a property, that has a lot to do with where I'm going to choose to rehab these properties is what my labor costs look like. So it's like, I don't know what other options there really, really are when, small business can continually eat at, I'll say, corporate margin simply because of our ability to, as you've said, pivot and give better customer service and put these systems in place. What other option is there?
Well, I think the safest thing we can do is take responsibility for our own lives and our own careers and gain some skills and meet needs in communities and have multiple streams of revenue and take care of ourselves. That's, I think, the best solution. That's my bias. But, there's going to be some industries, there's going to be phenomenal jobs for people that are in the field of hardware development, software development, app development, robotics, big data management. The new high-paying jobs are going to be, around this change and the domination of technology. But those new jobs, they're not going to come even close to replacing all those that are going to be lost in retailing and in manufacturing and in transportation and in shipping. Even in medicine, healthcare, pharmaceutical, we're seeing more and more robots doing surgery and creating manufacturing drugs. And in the security industry, we're seeing robots take the replace of, security guards and officers. So some industries are going to be phased out and die. They're going to be dying, and others are going to be the up and coming ones. But the up and coming ones won't create enough jobs for everyone that's going to lose jobs in all the other fields. And so that's why I say self-employment is a solution, and I think it's the best solution.
Well, okay. And you as a professor at a university, I'm assuming at some point that shift has got to affect the workforce and the education system, because it's like, hey, I'm learning stuff that doesn't matter anymore. I'm assuming that it's got to make its way that far too.
Yeah, and we're our company is called My New Enterprise, and we're trying to help with that shift as well. We're creating online courses and kind of moving where we think the market's going. And so we have about 8 university courses in the market that schools use. And then we have a course for the public that is just a complete how to build your own business course online. You can, again, find it at themainstreetentrepreneur.com. And it's 15 modules that it's based on the book and what we learned on this tour. And you can go and, purchase a course like that for a very reasonable price. And it will feature all of these entrepreneurs and assessment tools and readings and exercises. And basically it teaches people how to do this all online. So we're shifting and moving to where we think the market's going as well as a company. Understood.
And in fact, this is a good moment. I know that for the individuals that have made it this far, they probably want to know how to find out more about what you guys are up to. So what's going to be the best way for them to follow up with you?
The best website about this work we're doing now is themainstreetentrepreneur.com. And it talks about the book there. It talks about our online training program, and it talks about the new full-length documentary we're making, and it introduces our Kickstarter campaign that we're allowing the public to basically help us produce this document and giving phenomenal rewards for anyone that supports the project. But the themainstreetentrepreneur.com is where they'll learn about all these things.
Excellent. Okay. So as we wind down here, I've got one more question that I got to ask, because I think this is going to be interesting to hear your particular answer. For the moment, let's pretend, Mike, that someone is listening right now and they're on that fence. They think they have the entrepreneurial bug or spirit or whatever they want to call it inside them. They think they've got a great idea. Yet let's even go so far to say that they're standing in front of the superhero outfit store right now, ready to pick out their outfit and make this thing happen. But they still have that voice in the back of their head. That voice. And Mike, I know you know that voice. You've done battle with that voice. A lot of the people you have interviewed have done battle with that voice, because it comes up every time we want to go out there and think we could do something great. And occasionally it comes from people we're related to. But that voice is there in the back of their head, making them wonder, can I do it? Should I do it? Will it work? Will anyone buy it? And what happens when or if I fail? What would you say to that person if you knew they were going to do exactly what you told them in the next 48 to 72 hours? What would you say to them?
Well, I would say that you can do this. I've seen so many people do it. And the difference between those that do and those that don't is simply execution. You got to go out and start, and you got to go out and try, and you got to commit to stay with it till it works. And so, what we tried to do in this book, Main Street Entrepreneur, is really provide that inspiration and the role model, so they would say, hey, if she can do it, I can do it. Or if he can do it, I can probably do it. Because these are everyday men and women across the country. And it's just a matter of, going through the steps. If you take your idea through the steps, you have a great chance that a successful business will come out the other side, but you have to start. And the book really shows you where to start and how to take those steps. So I'd just say, do it. You can do it.
I like it. I like it very, very much. I definitely appreciate you taking the time as well to contribute not only your knowledge, not only your experience, but your wisdom that you've gained from running your own business. Thank you. I hope there's more professors listening who take on that challenge, and then sharing with everybody now, hey, here's how you can make it happen too. I definitely appreciate you taking the time to share that with us today at the Cashflow Diary, sir.
Thanks so much. I've really enjoyed being with you, Jay.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, you know what time it is. It's time for you to move at the speed of instruction. What does that mean today? It means the Main Street Entrepeneur.com. Get over there. Why? Because you know you want to know all 9 keys to success. You know you need the wisdom and experience, and being able to learn from someone else's mistake is cheaper than making your own. So don't wonder, is this for you? It's for you. That's why you've listened this far. Go make it happen. It's been fun talking to you guys today, and you know I look forward to talking to you soon. Until next time.